job for you all this morning. I have a bad habit of when I speak in public, my voice kind of starts to go like this. So, if you happen to notice that happening, I want you all to just kind of give me one of these, okay? And I'm going to start speaking a little bit louder so that you can understand what I'm saying. Was that an actual, like I need to speak louder? All right. Starting off well, No, for those of you that don't know, my wife and I, Carolina, went down to Uruguay in South America recently. And I say that not because I think that you weren't paying attention, like, for those of you that didn't know. No, I say that because I realized, like, 3 days before we left, I hadn't even told my family that we were going to Uruguay, South America. My dad was the only one that knew. And so they were all like, "You're going to South America?" And I was like, "Yes." So that's what I'm leaning on. I knew, if you hadn't noticed, we were gone last week, we were in South America. And one thing about Uruguay is, since it's in South America, they speak Spanish, right? That's what they speak there. So, we packed our bags, and we flew down southward, because it was south, obviously. There it is, there's my sign, all right, thank you, Andy. We flew down southward, and I realized as we flew further and further south, I was getting further and further away from my comfort zone. Right? So we flew from Indianapolis to Houston first. And we went to the Indianapolis airport, and for those of you that have never been there, it's a pretty normal airport. It's pretty small, it's pretty easy to navigate, And we flew into Houston, Texas, and as they say, everything is what in Texas? Bigger. So obviously the airport has to be bigger than the Indianapolis airport. So it was huge. It was way bigger than the Indianapolis airport. And we're walking around, and there are these dudes in like big men in big cowboy hats. And it wasn't that much different because they're still speaking English, and it's still very much like, it's still pretty comfortable, but I'm still, a little bit away from home. It's like, all right, Houston, I can handle this. I can navigate the Houston airport, no problem. No problem, we're good. So we fly from Houston to Lima, Peru. Now, Lima, Peru is where Machu Picchu is. It's where like the pyramids and the ruins and the city in the clouds and all that good stuff is. And that is actually in South America. And so, again, they're probably, if they're in South America, speaking Spanish or Portuguese, but probably Spanish, right? And so we landed in Lima, Peru, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, there's a lot more Spanish happening in this area than there was in the Houston area. But so there's a lot more Spanish happening here. But it's okay, because since Machu Picchu is such a huge tourist destination, and Lima is where like a lot of people go for like their adventure vacation and stuff, there was like Spanish and then there was English. So like every sign had Spanish and English on it, and the announcements would come over the loudspeaker in Spanish and in English. So all that really affected me needing to be a little bit patient to get my information, right? So I was like, okay, like we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto, but we're Texas or Indiana for that matter. But I can navigate this. This is okay. This is fine. I can make it through this, and I will be all right. So we had a layover there for about 8 hours, which it was overnight, luckily, so we got to actually sleep, which was really good. But then we took off from there, and we landed in Montevideo, Uruguay. And Montevideo is the capital of Uruguay, right? Just a little trivia for you this morning. That's not actually important for what I'm saying, but it's the capital of Uruguay. And we landed there, and all of a sudden, there was no English. None. I mean, actually, that's not entirely true. There were like advertisements for cell phones on the wall that were in English, right? So you got Emma Stone taking a selfie, and it was in English. It's like, cool, I can read about the new Samsung Galaxy whatever that Emma Stone is supposedly using, even though we all know Emma Stone uses an iPhone, but whatever. Anyway, the point is, there was like no English. Everywhere I looked, like everyone was speaking Spanish. All of the signs for like terminals were in Spanish. All of the signs for like where we were supposed to go were in Spanish. We left the airport, and all of a sudden I realized, if my comfort zone is like here, I was like all the way across the river over there, right? Because I speak maybe 10 to 15 words of Spanish, maybe. Carolina's looking at me like, more than 10 to 15 words of Spanish. But the truth is, I really have down pat like maybe a dozen words of Spanish. Like, I'm really confident in my ability to use these specific words. Like, I know what they mean, I know how to use them, and like I can actually speak these words of Spanish. So I was way outside of my league, like way out of my comfort zone, right? And I got by on really 3 words of Spanish all week. I got by on sí, which is yes, for those of you that don't know. I got by on no, which is no, for those of you that don't know. And I got by on gracias, which was thank you, right? So I could say, yes, I want something, no, I don't want something, and thank you for the thing that you just gave me or didn't give me because, right? So I could at least be polite about things. But the point is, like I didn't speak the language, and throughout the week, Carolina would kind of feed me phrases from time to time. So I would just kind of mimic the way that she would tell me to say things. And I felt a little bit like our video clip this morning.
I think I've got it.
Does it work?
I hope so.
Okay, all right. If not, I'll act it out for you.
You're already on the do that.
I'll give you a little while. That was me in Uruguay all week. Quite literally. It was just me kind of mimicking the things that I could make out and understand so that I could actually try to communicate the ways that I felt and thought about certain things. So, Tarzan, like me, didn't understand the language, right? He didn't understand the meaning behind the words that he was saying. They didn't mean anything to him because he didn't understand their purpose. Right? It's not that Spanish doesn't mean anything to me, it's just that I don't understand the language. So the words that I said, the words that I would mimic back, were words that didn't really hold much meaning for me because I don't speak the language. They were just sounds to me. In the movie it's like a nice montage. It's like when he learns English, right? But in reality, it would take a long time to learn the English language. And for me, it would take a long time to learn Spanish. It just wouldn't. Now, there's a language that we as believers speak, I think, and it can be just as confusing and maybe even more confusing than like an actual spoken language. We speak a lot in metaphors, you and I, like a lot in metaphors. We talk a lot about things like love offerings. It's like, we all know what a love offering is. It's when you pass around the plate for like a visiting missionary or whatever. And it's a love offering because you love the person, you're going to give offerings so they can get paid and this, that, and the other. But we talk a lot about those kinds of things. We talk a lot about being washed in the blood. We talk a lot about the blood of the Lamb, the blood of Christ, the body and the blood. We talk a lot about blood. I'm not sure why, but we do. We talk a lot about blood in the church. We talk about things like justification, sanctification, glorification. We talk about bearing fruit. We talk about the kingdom of heaven. We talk about being like vessels, and we talk about being sheep, and we talk about being children, and we talk about pearly gates. We talk about all these metaphorical things that make so much sense to us because they're things that we've grown up with and we really understand them, right? But here's the deal. No one else understands those things. If you haven't grown up in the church, it's really tough to understand these metaphors that we use and just snap them off like it's nothing, right? It's like we're speaking a different language. Now, am I saying those metaphors are bad? No, absolutely not, because they hold meaning for us, right? They hold meaning for you and I, and they're really useful for us. But when it comes to trying to help other people learn about the gospel, it's important, I think, for us to step out of our Christianese ways of thinking and speaking in order to help them and guide them toward the truth. Now, there's one word, one very specific word that I'm going to talk about most today. And I think it's one of the most, if not the most, integral concepts of our faith. It's a word that like we use it a lot, and I think we understand what it means, but it's still important to kind of hear about it and know about it in depth. And I think it's one of the most integral concepts because, honestly, ours is one of the only world religions that has it. And that concept is grace. Now, I'm going to put the youth on the spot. Who was here for winter retreat? Were you here for the first session? No, you weren't here for the first session. Who was here for the James? James was here for the first session. No pressure at all. But if you don't get this, the sermon is ruined. No, I'm just kidding. If you don't get this, I'll be your safety net. I'll pick it up for you. Okay? You think you got this? Okay. So, do you remember what grace is? Can you define grace for me?
It's something that you don't deserve.
Give the young man. Grace is getting something you don't deserve. Now, again, can you tell me what mercy is? Uh-oh. Do you remember? Mercy is not getting something that you do deserve. So let's go with mercy first, right? That differentiation is very important between the two. And I'll tell you why here in a minute, but let's just stick with the definitions first, right? Mercy is not getting something that you do deserve in a positive sense, right? It's not like I deserve to have $100 paid into my bank account, but I didn't get it. It's like, no, I deserve to be like smacked on the face, but I didn't get it. So it's the positive removal of something. It's subtractive, right? It's the removing of a consequence. Grace is getting something you don't deserve. Again, in the positive sense. It's getting something good even when you deserve something bad. It's additive. It adds something to you. Throughout Scripture, the way that I see mercy conveyed is very much like, woe is me, for I am a sinner. And God, because He is so merciful, is not going to punish me, right? I'm not sure if this is exactly accurate or not, but I always kind of felt like, as I was growing up, reading through the Bible, it's like there's this sense of God is kind of standing there with like this metaphorical, spiritual 2x4, right? And He's waiting for us to step out of line so He can just like smack us down with it. And like that's kind of the way that I've always pictured that. But because He's merciful, because He's so good and merciful, He doesn't hit us with the 2x4. Right? But there's always this kind of a sense of like this danger of punishment that goes along with mercy. Right? The two kind of go hand in hand. Mercy and punishment go together. You are being shown mercy if you are not being punished. But grace is very different. Grace is very open. It's very freeing. We're told to go boldly before the throne of grace. We're told by grace we have been saved through faith. Grace is very welcome, and it's very inviting. The passage I've chosen to illustrate this today is Romans 3:21-26, and it goes like this. We already read it once, but we'll read it again. But now the righteousness of God has been manifested apart from the law, although the law and the prophets bear witness to it, the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. For there is no distinction, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified by His grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God put forward as a propitiation, as a payment by His blood, to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness, because in His divine forbearance He had passed over former sins. It was to show His righteousness at the present time, so that He might be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. Okay, group participation. You do get class points for this. But group participation, and I need to give you a disclaimer first. If any of you actually raise your hand, I'm going to be asking you to come up to finish the sermon for me. Okay, so group participation, here we go. Who in here has never sinned? No? Don't be shy. I know I probably put you a little bit off with that whole, like, you're going to go up with this chamber. But no, like, who in here has never sinned? No, nobody. Really hoping somebody will come and finish this sermon for me. Oh, I'm just kidding. But seriously, we've all messed up, right? We've all sinned. We've all fallen into sin. There's another one of those Christian metaphors, right? We've all fallen into sin. We've all kind of been in the pit, so to speak, from time to time. It's happened to every single one of us. And because of our sin, because we made a free will choice, like little kids. Sorry, little kids in the room. Because we made a free will choice like little kids, we deserve to be disciplined, right? Really, we deserve to be punished. We deserve that spiritual metaphorical 2x4. But worse than that, we don't really just deserve like a smack on the hand or like to have to go like sit in the corner and like sit there for 20 minutes or whatever. What we deserve, because of our rebellion against the way that God wants things to be, is death. I'm not just talking about like death. I'm talking about like big D death. I'm talking about like spiritual, eternal death is what we deserve because of our rebellion against God. Because of our sin, we deserve to die. Now, the way I explained this to the youth after the retreat, I think, was like this. Let's say, Michael, I told you you were going to be in my sermon, right? And here you are, right? Let's say Michael, for some reason, I don't know why, just decides that he wants to hit me, right? He just wants to, don't actually come up here and hit me. He wants to just deck me, so he does. He comes up, he hits me, and I hit the floor, and maybe just to tell me who's boss, he kicks a little bit of dust in my face too. He embarrasses me in front of all these people. Because I don't know why, he's Michael, that's the way he is. Like, no, never mind. But no, let's just say that he does, right? Let's say that he decides that he wants to hit me. Now, what is the right, just, and fair thing for me to do?
Punch me back.
Hit him back, right? The right, just, and fair thing for me to do, the correct and fair thing for me to do would be to hit you back.
That is if you can.
Well, I mean, no, but that would be the fair thing, right? If he hits me, the fair thing is for me to hit him back. That's justice. Justice, right? But if I hit him back, what is he going to want to do back to me? He's going to want to hit me again. And let's be real here, he knocked me down on the floor the first time, and I'm not really sure how many times I could take being hit by Michael Ziegler. I'm just not sure. I mean, he's a big young man, right? Like, he's a strong young man, and I don't know how many times I could really take that kind of punishment. But the right, just, and fair thing is for me to hit him back. But mercy says, you know what? No. Even though you did a terrible thing to me, Michael Ziegler, you did a terrible thing to me, I'm not going to punish you for what you did. I'm removing a consequence from him. I'm subtracting his consequences so that he doesn't have to deal with them. And God does this with us by not punishing us for our sins. Because of Christ's sacrifice on the cross, he decides, I'm not going to punish you for your sins. In the Old Testament, it was because they made sacrifices and all these things, right? And so God says, I'm not going to smack you down with my 2x4. I'm going to show you mercy. I'm not going to punish you for what you did. And mercy is wonderful. Mercy is a miracle. But the thing is, mercy is not really enough. See, mercy removes our sin from us. But on its own, it still requires us to live up to a certain standard in order to get to heaven, in order to be able to live eternally with God. Mercy removes our consequences, but it still requires us to live this perfect life in order to be okay. So mercy on its own is not good enough. But that's where grace comes in. Let's go back to Michael punching me again, right? Michael punching me, yes, I told you were going to be in my sermon and you didn't believe me, so here we are. But Michael punches me, right? And he knocks me down on the floor, and mercy is me saying, I'm not going to hit you back. We've already established this, right? Grace would be me saying, Michael, you know what? Even though you hit me, I'm not going to hit you back, and I'm also going to give you a high five. Better yet, I'm going to give you a $20 bill. I don't actually have a $20 bill for you, so stay sitting, please. But no, grace is saying, you know what? Even though you did something bad to me, I'm actually going to give you good in return for the bad that you gave to me. In this case, the bad is our sin. This is a well-established fact. And grace is what God gives us in order to get us to Him. Grace is what God offers us in the form of salvation. You know, we do use a lot of churchy words. We speak a different language, and people don't understand it. We speak it, I think, without even meaning to. And it seems like the deeper you go into the faith, the more and bigger the words get, right? So eventually you get to things like transubstantiation and hypostatic union, and it's like, what do these things mean anymore, right? But truly, at the core of our faith, at the very center of it, is this one word, grace. And grace has a language all of its own, and grace is a language all of its own. And it speaks to our deepest longings and the deepest needs of our souls. And it guides us toward a bright and hopeful future, a bright and hopeful eternity with our Creator. And, as we learn to speak this language of grace, things start to happen in our lives. It's interesting because old grudges kind of go by the wayside and are let go, and relationships and little annoyances kind of don't annoy so much anymore because we realize how much we've been forgiven for and how much we've been given in return. And we're able to kind of put those things aside in love and grace. Now, am I perfect at this? Absolutely not, because if I were perfect at this, I would be making like a 7-figure per year salary, teaching other people how to be perfect at it. But the point is that this is a challenge, right? And this is an invitation to come and learn this language of grace and to try and help teach it to others. I really hope that you'll take that challenge with me. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the chance to preach this morning, even though I was terrified. Thank you for these people. Thank you that they're here and they're seeking you. And they want to know you. Please, God, guide us in the ways of grace. Help us to understand your grace toward us. And help us to give it to others as well. We love you. In Jesus' name. Amen.